Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. View of the world. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Then I suppose somebody comes along and says, well, why have you said this on Twitter? Is that okay? Go round and murder Alf at number 43 because he's a git. No, you can't really do that. That's true. That's very specific. But you also get into the, one lawyer will argue that the Lucy Connolly tweet was quite specific. It clearly wasn't. It was very general. It did absolutely sound like somebody sounding off in a pub, didn't it? If I had my way, I'd stick them, blah, blah, blah. People say stuff. They say rubbish. They say offensive things. And when you're angry at a time like this, against a backdrop of all of this, they say things that they wouldn't perhaps say in real life, or they wouldn't say it out loud. And forgetting that when you publish or when you put something on social media, you haven't just posted to some like-minded mates. You've published it to the world exactly the same way as a book or a newspaper or a political party might publish something. You're subjected to the same rules and regulations. And it does go back to that Section 19 of the 1986 Public Order Act. 40 years on, that is the law that's being used to deal with people on social media. That's got to change. I don't know where the line is, and there's the problem. I don't think anybody does, which is why they're scared. And of course, what governments want, what law enforcement wants, are areas where things are nice and calm, because it's the job of the criminal justice system, i.e. the government, to keep things calm. So when they spot something that isn't calm, the emergence of social media has shown that. Years ago, if they could have found all those people in pubs saying bad, hurty words, they'd have been round there. But it was you couldn't have done that. Now you can do that, so they're doing it. There is another interpretation, and that is that governments, including this one, particularly this one, do not like the views of some people, so they clamp down hard. True or false? 0344 499 1000. Let's speak on this and the other big stories of the day. We've got Robert Taylor back with us, the journalist and the broadcaster. Always good to have you on, Robert, as we shoehorn ourselves into a nice bank holiday weekend. Currently the sun is shining. Don't know if it's going to last, but what will last, of course, is some fine opinion from your good self on the big stories of the day, including, I thought this was interesting that we're talking about free speech today. We've had the first Labour MP who's come out and been slightly perturbed by the sentence given to Lucy Connolly. It's not normally in Labour's DNA to talk in this area because it sounds like you're defending racism or something like that, so they normally leave it alone regardless of what they actually think. Mary Glindon, who's Newcastle upon Tyne East and Wallsend MP, has said that she thought it was unduly harsh, so there's one voice on the left at least. I think there are others, by the way.
Yeah, it's really good to hear that. I mean, the tweet from Lucy Connolly was no doubt really offensive. It was fairly horrible, but she has a right to express her view. We should have, in a free society, a right to be offensive, quite frankly. I don't think that she actually incited hate. I think anyone who looked at that tweet would be thinking, well, she's a bit of a nutter and she's having a really bad day. But certainly not 2 years in prison at a time here where our prisons are absolutely chock-a-full. We're trying to release prisoners and we're putting people into prison for a stupid, offensive tweet. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah,
there's something really strange about it. And I understand all the arguments that, it's against the backdrop of a delicate time and, riots were about to start and already tensions had begun to spill over via social media that began the rumour that this was, somebody who just arrived on a boat and then made their way to Southport and carried out these horrendous killings and misinformation. And, it's not a pretty place, social media. We know that. But as it stands, Bob in Arbroath is as legally bound to adhere to the laws of the land of publishing as the editor of the Daily Telegraph. And that sounds, when you put it like that, you think that's a bit weird, isn't it?
Well, the law is just simply out of date for all the reasons you've just said. I think the bar for hate speech is way, way too low. And the way I usually judge these things is to go back to that old quote, was it Voltaire, who said, I might despise what you say, but I defend to the death your right to say it. And I think, broadly speaking, that's what we should go by. Of course, there are limits. No one can scream fire in a crowded theatre or cinema. because that's free speech that's going to lead to death. But the bar is way too low, and we've got to get new regulations for dealing with the modern age of social media.
Yeah, I think so. And I look, good luck to the person that has to do it. But I do sense there isn't really a political appetite, because taking this on is like taking on another world, isn't it? Given that the curious nature of this discussion, I suppose, Robert, is that social media has more than one purpose. Because whilst it does have the Wild West, the people with loose mouths, ill-informed opinions, inflammatory, left or right, whatever, it has all of that. But simultaneously, it has the biggest broadcasters in the world, using it to publish news. It has organisations from F1 to the FA who will use it to, show that great goal or discuss that, new team signing for Lewis Hamilton. It's got all of these other elements where it's really good. It's the best magazine that was ever invented. I know someone who only follows motor racing news. They don't follow anything else. They don't follow anyone else. They just have about 12 accounts they follow, and they have the best magazine of Formula One and motor racing you could ever imagine. And it sits there every day, and it's always refreshed. There's always new stories. Brilliant. What's not to like? And it's free as well. So that's the great side of it. But the bad side is Bob in Arbroath sometimes gets a little bit salty and a little bit libelous and a little bit iffy when it comes to his language.
And anyone who's been a journalist on Twitter, or X as it is now, will have received abuse at some stage. I know I have, and it can be pretty appalling, but I don't call in the police. And the other thing here, Ian, is that I wonder if Lucy Connolly, instead of targeting an asylum home, had instead said we need to burn down Reform HQ and kill everyone inside. Would she now be in prison for 30 months? Somehow I doubt it. So there's that two-tier element that's going on here that we have every right to be concerned about.
But I also imagine, in fact, I don't imagine, I'm pretty sure, Robert, that people will have different views depending on what. And with the Lucy Connolly thing, I think there are many people defending Lucy Connolly for different reasons. I come at this from a basic freedom of speech issue and an issue of the abuse of the social justice system, of the justice system. But others, I think, might be defending her because they actually agreed with what she said, so that takes them there. They wouldn't necessarily even bother to defend a similar freedom of speech case if it was about something else or came from a different political angle, maybe.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. I mean, I think what she wrote was completely odious. I mean, I wouldn't want to spend any time in her company, quite frankly. I don't care how bad a day she was having, but she shouldn't be in prison for it. She has a right to express herself if she so wishes. And, of course, she quickly regretted it and deleted it. I cannot see how in a sane society this is a matter for the police, the courts and prison.
Yeah, spot on. Something that should be a matter of prison is the person that negotiated the 30 billion quid Chagos deal, because that should be a custodial offence if ever there was one. Keir Starmer's deal, which originally was going to cost a fraction of that, could be up to 30 billion. That far exceeds the initial claims, Robert. And it does seem that, even with the best will in the world, and I've tried to look at this and find, because we had James Cleverly on with us yesterday, and he, of course, is distancing himself very much from this. It's not the deal I would have signed, etc. But it did begin under I think under Liz Truss originally, and then, eventually Cleverly gets hold of this. Given the task of trying to sort it out as Foreign Secretary. I think it comes from a series of legal challenges that there were United Nations and whoever else that were going to say, essentially, these islands need to be given to Mauritius. And while all of that legal toing and froing would have gone on, the UK and the US would have been impotent in terms of the security considerations for that territory. So as a result, they've kind of cobbled together this deal to say, OK, we'll give it to you, but we keep this bit.
Yeah, that's a very fair summary of what's happened, although I still don't really understand why these islands should belong to Mauritius.
Correct.
They were never part of Mauritius. The reason they're going to Mauritius is because apparently when all this was part of the British Empire, the Chagos Islands were administered from a British office in Mauritius. As far as I can see it, that's the only link to Mauritius. They're actually nearer to, is it the Seychelles, I think? Or
Probably, yes.
The Maldive Islands or something. They're over 1,000 miles from Mauritius. So why they're going there? The other element here is, I'm afraid, Keir Starmer massaging the figures, claiming this is going to cost 3.4 billion, and learned economists work out it's going to be 10 times that amount.
Yeah.
Starmer already has a reputation for epic flip-flopping, for bending the truth, for doing one thing having said he wouldn't, and not doing something he said he would. And now he's trying to pull the wool over our eyes about the true cost of this deal. I think it's been an appalling week for the Prime Minister, and I'm not surprised that his opinion poll ratings are going through the floor.
Yeah. And let's move to this story. Talking to the Prime Minister, they might go even further through the floor. Another attack from Trump, this time on net zero. Donald Trump has criticised Starmer and those net zero plans, urging the UK to simply prioritise North Sea oil drilling over renewables. Drill, Keir, drill, says Mr. Trump.
Yeah, this is one of the very few areas that Donald Trump and Tony Blair appear to agree on. It's only last month that Tony Blair said Labour's net zero approach is, I think I'm accurate quote it, doomed to fail, said Tony Blair. And of course, Trump is saying exactly the same thing. Why is Britain wearing this net zero hair shirt? 4 times the energy prices of elsewhere, and certainly 4 times what they are in the US. So we're paying through the nose for energy. We're pursuing this net zero agenda, and the rest of the world isn't, as far as I can see. Why are we doing this to ourselves? We've got all that North Sea oil. I don't agree with everything that Donald Trump says, but I think he's right on this one.
Yeah, you know, make it a parallel thing. You know, get one thing up and running, but don't, you know, shove concrete into the ground to cover up a very precious resource that could be saving us a good buck in the meantime. Listen, Robert, we hit the clock, but thank you as ever. Have a great bank holiday weekend. Robert Taylor, the journalist and broadcaster, with us here on the programme.